Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you all for coming to this seminar on the immigration process, sponsored by the Department of USCIS, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, working within the Department of the Homeland Security. By way of introduction, my name is Mary Bird. I am a USCIS officer and have been working with the department for the last 15 years. When I first began, the department was known as the INS, Immigration and Naturalization Services. As we all know, after 9/11, many changes and restructuring of certain departments occurred. On November 25, 2002, the President signed the Homeland Security Act of 2002 into law. This law transfers INS functions to the new Department of Homeland Security. Immigration enforcement functions were placed within the Directorate of Border and Transportation Security, and the immigration service functions were placed into a separate department, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS. So, once the Homeland Security Act of 2002 was signed into law, the INS ceased to exist as we knew it then and is now functioning as the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Now, today's presentation will focus on the current process for obtaining a visa. And there are basically two categories of visas: immigration visas and non-immigration visas. Our discussion today will focus on the general immigration eligibility process. The immigration process in itself can be very overwhelming and intimidating for people coming to this country, or even for those who've been born here in the U.S., but whose family members have not yet become U.S. citizens, and or have not previously applied for any type of immigration status with the Department of USCIS. And I know many of you are counselors, social workers, and the like that are here to gather this information to better assist your clients. So I hope this seminar today will help clarify the process and hopefully answer some, if not most, of your questions. You all have been given a notebook that contains PowerPoint slide notes that coincide with each of the three sections that we will be focusing on today. You will see two tabs that list all the different types of immigration visas and non-immigration visas. Also, you will find several frequently asked questions for each of the three processes. And under the last tab of your notebooks, you will see a section that covers specific terminology, jargon, and acronyms used within the USCIS system. To begin, I would like to outline the immigration process. To set the foundation for our discussion today, and to make sure that we are all on the same page, we need to understand the definitions of certain terms that are often used within the USCIS system. Let's begin with the term immigrant. An immigrant, also called a lawful permanent resident, is a foreign national who has been granted privilege of living and working permanently in the United States. A foreign national is any person who is not a U.S. citizen and includes permanent resident aliens. A permanent resident alien is anyone who is not a U.S. citizen who has moved to this country and is permanently residing within the U.S. This includes individuals who have an immigration, work, or student visa. In order to become an immigrant or foreign national, you must go through a multi-step process. 1. One must be eligible for immigration under one of the paths to lawful permanent residency. And we will be discussing the eligibility requirements in more detail shortly. 2. The USCIS must approve an immigrant petition for applicant, which is usually filed for the foreign national by an employee or a relative, someone who thereby becomes a sponsor for the applicant. Certain applicants can petition on their own behalf, such as priority workers, investors, certain special immigrants, and diversity immigrants. There is a detailed explanation on who can become a sponsor and the application that must be filled out to become such. You will see that in your notebooks under the tab Sponsorship. 3. If the applicant is seeking to become a lawful permanent resident or an LPR based on employment, their U.S. employer may need to submit a labor certification request with the Department of Labor's Employment and Training Administration. In your notebooks under Employer, you will see the application and request forms for that process. 4. If an individual is already in the United States, they may apply to adjust to permanent resident status after a visa number becomes available for them. If they are outside the United States, when an immigrant visa number becomes available for them, they must then go to their local U.S. consulate in order to complete their processing. Obtaining an immigrant visa number is an essential step in the immigration process. Now, let's talk about eligibility in a little more detail. The U.S. immigration system is based primarily on family reunification, needed work skills, employment creation, and recognition of refugees. Also, there is a lottery for people who come from countries with low rates of immigration to the United States. There are 6 ways to become eligible for U.S. immigration. These include family immigration, employment immigration, investment immigration, lottery, adoption, and refugees and asylum. You will find in your notebooks under the tab Eligibility a detailed explanation of what each of these encompasses. Individuals wanting immigration status need to use an application for naturalization, Form N-400. Either the individuals themselves or you providing assistance to them can call the USCIS Forms line at 1-800-870-3676. You may also download the form and the guide for the application from the internet at the following address: http://uscis.gov. The phone number and URL can be found under the Resources tab in your notebooks. Once the application is filled out and completed, they can send the form N-400 to the appropriate USCIS Service Center. For information about the Service Center that serves your area, see the USCIS Office tab in your notebooks. Remind the applicants to make a copy of their application. Also, remind your clients to not send original documents with their application unless the document checklist included with the guide states the original is required. Make it very clear to them that they should always make copies of documents that they send to the USCIS. USCIS will make every effort to make reasonable accommodations for applicants with disabilities who need modifications to the naturalization process to demonstrate their eligibility. For example, if the applicant uses a wheelchair, we will make sure that they can be fingerprinted, interviewed, and sworn in at a location that is wheelchair accessible. If the applicant is hearing impaired, the officer conducting the interview will speak loudly and slowly, or we will work with the applicant to arrange for a sign language interpreter. If the applicant uses a service animal, such as a guide dog, their animal may come with them to their interview and oath ceremony. If the individual knows in advance that he or she will need some kind of accommodation, the individual needs to write a letter or have someone like you to assist in explaining what is needed and send it to the district office conducting the interview after the individual receives their interview notice. We are continuing to work on better ways to make the naturalization process easier for applicants with disabilities. So this completes my presentation on the general immigration eligibility process. Hopefully today's presentation has shed some light on this subject and clarified some of the changes since 2002. I will be happy to stay during the break and answer any individual questions. Again, thank you for coming, and I hope I have been of some help. This afternoon, I will be presenting again on the process of becoming a U.S. citizen, and more specifically on how to fill out the Form N-400 in its entirety. So, hope to see you all back this afternoon.